We're individuals often going into locked buildings with people we don't know very well, right? Or buildings that can lock, or being deep into a house or what have you, or meeting people anywhere where it's just you and somebody else, or sometimes you and multiple somebody else's. And we can never really be too careful for the sort of vulnerability we're putting ourselves into. Hello again, everybody. I'm Daniel. I'm here with Katie, and this is Level Up.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I am doing spectacular. The sun is shining, even though it's cold. I'm telling myself it's warm, and that's good. And before we get into our banter, this is a reminder to all of you listening that if you have not yet subscribed to this podcast on YouTube and followed this podcast on Spotify, you are missing out, and it took you way too long to find us this time. Think about how easy it'll be next time if you check those little boxes around us. It helps us out a great deal. We're happy to see that the viewership and the listenership is growing with every episode, and you can be part of that train. So do all the things. We won't ask you again. Thank you very much. And scene on that. And also, I am very excited, as you probably know, not you out there, but Katie knows, that we at the podcast at Level Up have a new partner that we're really excited to chat about a little bit right now. You'll be hearing a lot more about them in future episodes, but we have partnered effective now with a company out of the United States that is ridiculously cool called Rolla. That's Rolla.
Rolla.
I was waiting for it. I knew
Is
it was
that?
coming. Is that like holla? It's
Yeah.
spelled similar, just not with an H. But what
Rolla.
Rolla does, and this couldn't be more of a fit for all of you who are listening out there, and that's why we're so excited to partner with them and sing their praises, is that they are an app that will make your video making experience ridiculously easy. I think that's in a sentence what they're designed to do. They are a one-stop shop to take either the nervous, never does it video person who constantly feels like they need to go to a professional and spend a lot of money, or the person who just can't get over the hump of taking really shitty videos with their phone. And yeah, this is a partnership comment that came with a swear word in it, but it is what it is. And it basically turns you into almost an instant pro, dare I say. It is an app that's built with templates for every type of video, with AI driven, I guess you could call it guidance along the way, where it tells you things as minute as your phone is off center, it's off balance, you need to move it slower, faster, the lighting is good, bad, and otherwise, and literally storyboards you through every type of video you could possibly want to do, and puts it all together for you in an instant. It is a very cool app. We have a link where you can download it and try it for free in the liner notes on YouTube, in our wherever you're seeing it right now. You can get that link. Check it out. Try it for yourself. It has already been adopted across much of the United States. We're in Canada, and they are yet to put their feet in the grass over here. The grass that is yet to disappear very soon, even though the sun is out. But we
Grass that
really,
is getting
yeah,
cold.
the grass is not green anymore. But that being said, give them a click, try it out for yourself. I'm a big fan of it. I think this is going to solve a lot of the problems that are out there for a lot of you folks who are curious about how to put a video together that's optimized for social media, that's the right length, that you can edit, do all the things. We're going to talk more about it later on in future episodes, but we're really excited to partner with them. And yeah, that is
Yeah.
my shameless open the episode. Let's talk about Rolla. That's Rolla again. You can also see them at rollavideo.com, but click on the link for an instant download. I believe at the moment it is only available for your Apple phones and your iOS devices.
And you can do a free trial.
And yeah, and you'll do the food. Yeah, yeah. We're not
which
we're
is
not
cool.
selling you anything. We're not in the business of selling anything. This
No, but it lets you try things out, go on your next property tour, or if you're doing a market update, like there's so many different templates. So just go download it, check it out, and
it's very
do your
cool.
thing.
Yeah, and
Do a
and
video.
it does. They'd be remiss if they didn't give you the option of interacting with professional editors as well. If you've got bigger projects or things that need that additional touch, that is an option that comes with them as well. But if and when you try it out and like it, I can assure you, when you see the price they charge for a full subscription, it is the opposite of prohibitively expensive. It will cost you less for an entire year than what one photographer will cost you video out for one property. So take that to the bank. Anyway, let's talk about our podcast, which is not about video.
No, not this time,
I
but
don't need I don't need no segue. We're jumping right in.
that's
Head
right.
first. We had a very interesting week and a really insightful pair of guests in our office this past week that has, I think, sparked a need to have an important conversation that is useful for our entire industry. And so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's about keeping everybody safe out there. And I think, I mean, especially with the awful news events that's been happening over the last little while. Obviously, safety is something that's a top priority. Well, it's always a top priority, but it just reminds us how important it is when we hear of such awful things that is happening right now. But for the most part, we don't talk enough about it. I think we're all kind of aware of it. I think we have little ideas on how to keep ourselves safe, but if something were to happen with you guys out there when you're doing your job, how do you actually help yourself and defend yourself in certain situations? So, yeah, the guests we had that came into the office this week were martial arts masters, shall I say, but just gave us some really awesome tips and ideas and easy ways to just keep ourselves safe when we're maybe putting ourselves into less than ideal situations, which we often do when we're in real estate and meeting with strangers.
I mean, look at the industry that we're in. We take, not everybody, but a lot of us take for granted how vulnerable and how easy of a target we are. And I know, generally speaking, and rightfully so, and even the guests we had were focusing on the women agents in our office more so. And yes, there's a vulnerability there that is greater than men, but this applies to everybody. We're individuals often going into locked buildings with people we don't know very well, right? Or buildings that can lock, or being deep into a house or what have you, or meeting people anywhere where it's just you and somebody else, or sometimes you and multiple somebody else's. And we can never really be too careful for the sort of vulnerability we're putting ourselves into. So it's really important that we don't lose sight of the fact that we're driven by certain things to get our job done. And it's a necessity of our business to do things like that. But we need to, among other things, follow some of the steps that were given to us, which I think was a really good way to look at this, in order to defend yourself and to be prepared
Mm-hmm.
for what hopefully never does, but has the possibility of happening. And we've heard horrible stories, thankfully few and far between, but they happen. And like you said, I mean, the world is just, it's a scary place. It can be, and we always want to look glass half full, but lots of things are happening globally and in our own backyard. It's always a risk that something can happen, and you need to be prepared, not ignorant to it, and prepare and not pretend like it'll never be you.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So I think first and foremost is the awareness piece, which is the most important, and that kind of brings into the picture the idea that before you meet with people, like make sure you're covering your bases. And if it's a complete stranger, number one, I think for the most part, most of us can say that the clients that reach out to us that want to work with us will come from somewhere that makes sense, whether they're a referral or from your website, or a lot of these people like will randomly reach out to you. And that's when you kind of have to get check your gut and see if this situation feels right, because there's been many times where I've just ended up ignoring people that have reached out to me because it doesn't seem right. And I think that's obviously the most important piece when it comes to safety, is just your awareness of, okay, does this make sense that somebody randomly reached out to me through Instagram or on like text message and wants to see this random place that's vacant, at 10 o'clock at night, like those,
Well,
all these different signs should point towards something's not feeling right.
you just pointed out several red flags that, yeah, if all of that is happening in
Yeah. If
one,
all
then
of that, then I hope everybody
yeah,
has
like
their
someone you've
backup.
never
But
heard from contacting you through a medium you didn't put out there to meet somewhere that is not safe. Like, I mean, even if any one of those, I think this is not too dissimilar to even when I do FinTrack training in the office. And to those of you who aren't in Canada, like that's basically like the need to identify the people we're working with um, as part of a larger anti-fraud thing. But this is from a safety perspective. The red flags you just listed a lot. Like, you need to know who the people are. And the reason it's hard, or has been hard again, is because we're soft targets in a market that's competitive. Getting a message from somebody that says, I'm interested in this listing, or I want to buy a house, or I'm looking for a listing agent, or whatever, is a very hard thing to ignore, right? We're all hungry for business. Most of the stuff we talk about is about how do we get those emails from people? How can we encourage people to send us that exact message? But think about, forget violence, just think about the scams that are out there and the way people are preyed upon using especially social media or email or things like that. They look for where you're most vulnerable, and real estate agents are vulnerable when someone looks like they're going to give them business. So
yeah.
ask yourself, how real is this, and how possible, and how can I vet it before I actually get put in a position where I'm with this person?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot that you can do there. And I know there's lots of tips out there. So I don't know if we want to get into those per se, or more like the defense
Yeah.
aspect of things. But I think, yeah, I mean, I know our team, like we often talk when somebody random reaches out to one of our agents, and we kind of get each other's takes on it. So having some colleagues in the industry that you can kind of just bounce this idea off, and ideally a colleague that might be able to go along with you in situations where you're not 100% comfortable, is a great way to just give yourself that extra support and extra protection in those types of situations. Because it's not to say that every situation where you're meeting a complete stranger is a dangerous one. It's just you've got to arm yourself with the right awareness and protections to keep yourself safe.
Well, that's what it is. It's preparing yourself for what could be without approaching every situation like everybody I see is going to attack me, because that will also
Yeah,
probably
it's not
not,
healthy.
it's not healthy. Yeah, I mean, it's not the way you want to live your life. But yeah, from an awareness perspective, when you're in a situation, look for the signs outside of what's right in front of you. Like, ask yourself, does this environment make sense? If you are in a situation where you're going to meet with somebody, if someone won't come with you, if first of all, if you're not comfortable going by yourself, don't, full stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, but at least make sure people know where you're going to be. We've gone so far in situations that have seemed weird where we've gone on Zoom calls with our agents with a new client because it seemed sketchy
Hmm.
potentially, and just
Yeah.
be there as someone who's a colleague. Like, when, and the same goes for you, if someone comes to you who's a colleague and feels uncomfortable, we genuinely are all in this together. Nobody wants to see anybody put in a bad situation. It doesn't matter if you're competitors for the business. This is what makes the industry better. This is what really, I guess, addresses a big problem with society and gets ahead of it. So be a support system. We've talked about this before as well, but ask for support and don't do anything until you're comfortable. Whenever something around you doesn't seem right, make note of it, you know, record things if you need to,
Hmm.
just prepare yourself so that going into the situation is not going to overwhelm you with a sense of, I shouldn't be here. You shouldn't get
Hmm.
into a situation where that's the first thing that you're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to buyers, like it's obviously you want to meet in a public place if you're meeting them for the first time, whether it's in your office or in a coffee shop or something like that. Like that's a good way to just make sure everything looks fine.
Mm.
But I think it's also a challenge for agents and on the listing side because you're typically meeting somebody in their own home for the first time. And obviously, you're not going to go to a coffee shop to meet somebody for a listing appointment because that would be weird unless you're looking to list the coffee shop for sale or something like that. Um, but again, if if it's a referral from a past client and you know them and that's one thing. But if it's like, somebody you might want to bring and anybody, you could bring a partner along and a partner could be your friend, your husband, a colleague, like it doesn't necessarily have to be a fellow realtor, just to make sure they don't give any real estate advice when they're there, but whatever you need to do to make yourself feel safe.
That's a
But
whole other
also
episode.
yeah, and also like the identification piece, like, you want to do your due diligence in the back end. You know their names, you have access to the records for the home. Does that person actually own the home? Can you
Right.
ask for their ID? Like all of those kinds of things. Creep them on Facebook and Instagram and all those kinds of things to make sure you know who you're speaking with.
And before you meet with somebody anyway, you should be doing some degree of due diligence, right? Like I understand if it's a listing appointment, you're going to be asking a lot of questions and learning things in the room, but ideally you're going into that with some degree of preparedness for your presentation. So the more you can assess when it's not someone you know very well, what's their motivation, like you said, verifying ownership, all the things, making sure that you've got your T's crossed so that the story checks out.
Yeah, you want all the lines or the dots to be connecting.
Right.
That's key. If you start like doing missing a
Well,
few lines, you got to start questioning if
and
this
it
is
sounds
right.
like common sense, but I guarantee you, people listening to this have been reached out by people and have gotten excited right out of the gate. And their first
Mm.
instinct was, I need to go meet this person as quickly as possible because, I don't know how they like. I mean, even to ask a question like, how did you
How
find
did you
me?
yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
If you don't know how they found you, then it's a fair
If they don't know
question,
how you found them, have
or
they
how they
found
found you.
you?
Well, that's it. Like, and people are doing this probably at mass, but then there's other people who are specifically targeting people as well, right? So both ways, people need to be able to answer the question. And sometimes the answer, even if it's honest, is going to make you uncomfortable in itself, right? Like if somebody says, I saw your sign and I like the way you look.
Then that's a
Do you really want
no.
to
I
meet with that
no,
person? Right?
no. Hang up.
So strange. I've never gotten that call. Oh well.
Yeah, no,
If I got
that's
that call,
definitely
I'd
a
be
red
like,
flag.
really? Like
Hey,
maybe we should meet. Um, I'm kidding. So yeah, do as much research as you can, and then in the moment, most of what we learned and most of what we've talked about was not about that preamble, right? Because you generally won't need to defend yourself to someone you never see. But
mm,
the best defense is never getting into the situation in the first place. So,
yeah.
and that's not what this episode is about. That's not like the end of the episode. Like,
No,
okay,
no,
so
no. No,
defending
I just
yourself
want to
is don't get into the situation
yeah. Well,
and we're done.
I want to also just talk about the awareness piece from an open house perspective because
Sure, yeah.
that's also another common situation that you can find yourself in. And like you can tell when like somebody comes in that just doesn't seem right, then just make sure you're keeping yourself safe. Ask for identification, say that's part of the process, or if you feel like you're literally going to be in physical danger, like leave the house or stand outside the house or something like that. Just keep yourself out of harm's way. Keep something in between you, like a kitchen island. Don't have the person follow you. You go behind that person. So there's never an opportunity where something could happen from behind. So you just it's that awareness piece. And that's definitely a situation, especially in a vacant home where you could be at risk.
Absolutely. And don't even with open houses, if you're going to be uncomfortable with the idea of doing one by yourself, it's the same
Mhm.
thing. Like bring someone with you or or it's okay to tell a client you're not comfortable with something they're requesting of you, right? I mean, an open house, it is a natural part of the job. I think it's not odd to say I'm not comfortable doing an open house, but I think finding alternative ways to do it that are comfortable is better than just saying I don't do them because I don't feel safe in your house.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, there's any number of situations that you can put yourself in. And most of the time you're going to be on your own. Right. So
Mhm.
at a minimum, make sure people know where you are,
Where you are. Yeah, that's important.
whether it's your broker, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a family member, whatever, you
Yeah.
need to have like these really basic control systems for yourself that, if somebody doesn't hear from you, it's not like at least people can piece together where you are and where to check on you and things like that. And you can go so far as to have other things. We didn't talk about this with the self-defense folks, but we've talked about that here. Like, do you need like a safe word or something in your
Yeah.
brokerage that, if you're in a bad situation, we're on WhatsApp groups with all of our agents. Is there something that you can text to somebody looking natural to warn people you're in a bad spot, right? Whatever puts you in a better position of being comfortable, you need to do, and you need to establish and make sure people know so that you can get the support if you need it as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's get into the more physical part of defending yourself.
Let's start kicking some ass. Oh yeah, that was a good little chop you did there.
I don't know
So
if that would work.
yeah, so I guess the second element, and this was sort of came at us with sort of a listy approach, which we love.
Your favorite.
It is. But the second piece, once you're in there, that was important, other than awareness, if I'm not mistaken, was to
Mhm.
move, right? It was move.
Correct. It's Amber. Amber is the
It's the acronym.
word, the acronym. Thank you. What is that
Yeah.
called?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
move.
actually a good acronym to remember, not for a good reason, but, the idea of an Amber Alert, the idea of an Amber Light, these sorts of things are tied to a feeling of safety and that sort of stuff. So, um, yeah, the M in Amber is to move. And the idea there is you want to be able to maintain a comfortable distance from people who are around you, especially again. These are all sort of predicated upon you're by yourself, but whatever. I mean, if you're on your own, you need to be able to ensure you've got a safe perimeter around yourself. And often that will require you to physically kind of move in tandem with someone who might be moving in your direction, I
Yeah.
guess is one way of putting it.
Yeah. And the one thing I think we all learned is that how close somebody is, like our comfort level with closeness is a lot more generous, I'd say, than what it should be.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind like how quickly somebody could move. Somebody can really like jump at you. And I think he used the example with a police officer and somebody with a knife, and like what's the likelihood of somebody with a knife lunging at somebody before like the police officer can get his gun out or her gun out? And it's like 100% of the time, I think he said the knife person always won
And
because
the
you're,
distance was far. Like it
yeah, was
wasn't like
far.
knife
Yeah.
distance. It was a good
Hmm.
10, 15 feet away. But in
Yeah.
the time it takes to unclip and cock and all those things, it's
Yeah.
game
You don't
over.
have time. Exactly. So people
So
can move. So know that people can move fast. And that's why keeping a safer distance is always good. But I don't know if he meant this, but also you move. Like, you
right.
know, yeah. Okay. I was trying to make sure that that was what it was too. Yeah. Like
That's
you
well
want to,
that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
okay, like move out of the way, but also like get out of the situation as quickly as you possibly can. And one thing that was brought up is that when we're showing a home, a lot of us will typically lock the door behind us because we don't want, say, another agent coming in, or, sometimes it's double bookings or whatever. And we just want to make sure that there's privacy. But at the
See,
same
now we know how
time,
dumb that is, huh?
if you're locking the doors, it just makes it so much harder to get out if you need to. So like it's almost better if, especially if you're meeting with a stranger and like you haven't listened to the first part of this podcast and made sure you were protected in other ways, unlock all of the access points so that, God forbid something happened, you can easily get out.
Well,
You
and
don't want to
this
have those locked up.
this goes back to awareness as well, which we didn't cover, which is when you can, taste the place first. Get
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
and know
Know
where,
your
is there
exits.
a
Yeah.
back door? Is there a front door? Do the windows open? I mean, you're not
Yeah.
going to like leave all the windows open so you can jump head first out the second
Yeah.
floor if the
Well,
time
actually,
comes.
yeah, that's
But
the E of Amber. So we jumped
well,
ahead. Oops.
yeah, well, we won't jump to
Sorry.
that
That
yet.
was
But
my
I
phone.
mean, but the idea is having an understanding of what's there and then the awareness as you're doing it of what's happening. If you come in and let's say the person comes in behind you, which is a little bit more conventional. I know we say stay behind, but like if you let them in, if when you're in there, they lock the door,
Oh, geez.
like
I'm running out the back right away.
well, it's be aware or like let them come in and then unlock the door or like little things like that. Like not everybody is doing it with bad intentions, but
No, I
especially
know.
when it's
Yeah.
someone you don't know, I hate to say assume the worst because you won't be able to do your job
Yeah.
properly if you're just staring at them waiting for them to attack you. But at the same time, again, all these things, you need to know what you're going to do next. It's like when you're playing a sport, when we talk to our kids about playing basketball or things like that, it's not enough to know that someone might pass the ball to you. It's if I get the ball, what am I going to do? What's my next move? Things happen quickly. So
Yeah.
it's not enough to sit there and say, this person might come at me. It's like, okay, if they do, what are you doing next? Right.
Yeah.
Which is still even and this is kind of almost how I'd wrap up this whole episode. But to me, I still believe in practice, and we talked about this with him too. In practice, you won't do most of the things that you've been told to do because panic sets in
Right. Yeah.
and it's
You
hard to
just,
just
yeah.
say, oh, I need to do this and shift this way and the door's over there and whatever. But
Yeah.
this is where you need to discipline yourself to be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the B in Amber is I was
What
gonna
were you
say
going to
a B
say?
word.
You were going to say a different
Um,
B word?
I was gonna say nothing. No, I was just gonna say a different word.
The B in amber is carnival. Is
Block. Block is the word that I was looking for. No, because
yes.
I had written beside it open palm. I was gonna say open palm.
The B in amber is open palm. It's
Be
bopin
like,
palm.
what? Anyway, open palm. Well, no, because I
Everybody just
liked
gave up on the episode. They're like they don't even know their alphabet. I should.
they're like, no, no, I like this one because to me, I like I've never punched somebody, so I can't imagine I
That's
could
good.
effectively punch somebody if I needed to. So he did say that like an open palm, like to somebody's nose or to somebody's whatever ear, that or neck or something, that is just as effective as a punch. So
Jumping off the block though. You're getting into the aggression. That's not the block. That's the attack. That's like hitting somebody. But
well,
yes,
you're
that is true.
okay. You mean blocking like an attack, like
Yeah, well,
is that what
that's
you're
the
saying?
block. That's what the block is. Block wasn't punch in the face.
To me, I guess in my mind, I'm like,
I,
I don't know. I get the block. I'm not very good at the block because
I
we
know
did
we
practice
practiced.
all of this and it was really bad. So I need number one, need to practice it. But number two, like I think my mind automatically goes to like what I can do to protect myself, and blocking probably isn't the easiest thing. I'm just thinking of somebody bigger than me, like trying to like punch me or something. Like I don't know if I could block a punch. I don't think I'm that strong.
Okay, I think you are. I think you're stronger than you think you are. But I also think it's not the kind of instinctual thing you're ever going to do. I agree with that. You're not just going to
I'd
sweep
probably
your hand.
duck.
You what? You would
I'd probably
duck
duck
like a
if
video
somebody's trying to
game.
punch me, yeah, or like
Like,
just like protect myself. I don't know.
but the, if I can just take one step back and then
Bring
we'll get to throat punches,
take away open palm.
then we can Hadouken
Come back.
people. Um,
I like this part though. Okay,
no, well,
fine.
no,
Start with
we're not
block for
forgetting
now.
that. You can get back to how you're
Okay.
kicking people's asses, but the idea of block is to kind of thwart the initial attempt at coming at you, and
Right.
move is part of that also. So the
Yeah.
example, which I get where he's coming from, and in when you look at it, it makes sense. I don't think in practice this exact way would make sense, but the example he used, maybe conceptually, is if someone's coming in at you with their hand, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not he wasn't treating this as much as people punching you in the face. He was treating this more as people grabbing,
Trying
people
to
kind
grab.
of
Yeah, no, that's true.
more of
That's
a
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
not necessarily an always sexual nature, but something more to the effect of like trying to get close to you. And so
Right.
the example of a hand coming towards you, he took a step back. No, okay, that's another one. You're doing all the other moves. If you're again, this is always incentive for people to watch this if you're only listening. But the move that he gave was you take a step back and you basically catch their hand in a handshake. That was
Oh, right. I
that was the
remember
example.
that. Sorry, that
You're
was like the
all
most
about
important
kicking ass.
one.
I mean, I got all kinds of time for the ass kicking stuff because I go there too, but I'm trying to I'm trying
Yeah,
to
no, you're right.
recreate.
You're right. Handshake, handshake.
So
That's
if
right. I
they're coming in
forgot.
with their hand, you kind
Yeah.
of take a step back and kind of catch their hand, shake their hand, and even though, see, to me, it's weird because if this is partway through when you're meeting them, you're not shaking someone's hand, you know,
Well, I think he was trying to, he was saying like you want to,
sends a
um,
message.
well, it sends a message, but it also helps to, what's the word? Like reduce the conflict or, there's a word that I'm thinking of,
Diffuse.
but diffuse. Yeah. Diffuse. Like if somebody is kind of has this intention of attacking you and you kind of I just don't think you'd be in the frame of mind to kind of not joke but just be like, oh yeah, hi, nice to meet you, kind of
I
thing,
think,
like
yeah,
in that moment.
it was
I think
put
he
too
was
much
thinking
in a
more of like
jokey
a,
way.
I think it was more, yeah, like somebody that maybe he's thinking if somebody isn't all there and, maybe you can diffuse it by talking about it.
Yeah.
Like I think that was a big part of it as well. Is if you can try to talk somebody out of doing something stupid, that could be a good first try
Hmm.
before you start punching and
Before you go to
open
friggin' town on
palming.
them, I'm gonna have you on speed dial. You show up with like a machete, but
I feel like my initial reaction if somebody comes
well,
at me is not going to be to try to diffuse the situation. But
okay.
it's
So
it's
so
a good point. It's a good point.
let's let's blend that with your ass kicking. So the other reason for that, and for the
Yes.
traditional wax on, wax off blocks, which he did mention
Yes.
are
Yes.
effective ways to
Very
do it.
effective.
And you can
Yeah.
talk open palms in a second because you're waiting to open palm to bitch slap people and all that. But when you catch a hand and shake a hand, or the blocks, which we can talk about, in both of those situations, it also
Mhm.
puts you physically in a position where you can have the upper hand, so to speak. Like if
Mhm.
you're holding somebody by their hand,
Yeah.
awkward as it might be, you're actually physically, for the moment, controlling the situation because
Yeah.
you've got their hand, which is a key sort of weapon that they might intend to use.
Yeah.
Plus, and this is where it does make sense, it creates a certain degree of confusion because people who have an intention to come at you one way or another are basically just looking for squirming, uncomfortable. I mean, they're not, I don't think they're looking for you to say, oh, yeah, come in, right?
Come at me, bro.
Come at me, bro. So, like, if you catch their hand and shake their hand, or you do something that they weren't expecting, and all of a sudden, for even just a second or two, you've got literally the upper hand,
Mhm.
it puts you in that moment where then you can unleash
Yeah.
your crazy ass.
Well, okay, but yeah, and I think it does would catch most people off guard. Like if you put yourself into a position of power in that situation, I don't think most people going into that sort of a scenario where they intend to hurt you or do whatever to you think that you're going to be able to be in any sort of control. So I think it's good to do that, and the hand thing will also allow you to like, go back to the physical stuff, but like the twisting of the wrist and getting them down. Like, and we tried that when we were doing the lesson, and just having that control can also control how you can physically move somebody. Um,
Yeah.
in most cases.
Well,
So
and I
it's
think, yeah, for the purpose of the podcast, maybe the actual moves we can only talk so much about because it's going to be we're not ninja masters, but you mentioned the open palm was a really good. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
from a you not hurting yourself perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and also from a potentially like I know you're talking about actually striking people with an open palm. You're all about that,
Mhm.
which is fine. But
I'm not
like,
all about it. I
well, I mean,
just
it's yeah,
anyway.
but it is as or more effective in some
Hmm.
cases than punching or things
Yeah.
like that. And you might not want to go straight. Like if someone's just reaching in your direction, maybe they just want the feature sheet that's behind you. You don't want to just frack them in the face, right? But at the same time, you need to be prepared for what could be. And if you just do kind of sweep across and push their hand to the side and like in effect grab them, like you said, by the wrist or grab them by the arm, you can do a lot and
Hmm.
not be bigger than the other person when you've got people in certain positions and scenarios and you're positioned a certain way. So I was a little bit um surprised actually that even though, and we'll get to E and what E is, but even though I guess your end goal is to get the hell out of there, he was still pretty focused on like, correct me if I'm wrong, like doing a little bit of harm to the person before you do that. You know, like if you know
Yeah,
you're in
which
a
I'm kind of
situation,
I'm not like I think instinctually most people will, if any opportunity arises, will run. And
right?
I know we've all seen the
Spoiler
movies where
alert,
somebody
that's
tries to
R.
run.
Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, we've already done E. E is exit. Know your exits, which we've already talked about.
Right,
So
right.
let's talk about running. So
Let's talk
run.
about running. How do you run?
Well, no, but like we've seen those movies where somebody turns around, tries to run, and the person grabs their leg or something, and then they're back in the same position or even a worse position that they
Right.
were. So again, I think it comes down to I like the moment and the instinct that you would have. I mean, I can't even imagine being in that situation, but I don't know. I would say that anything you can do to temporarily give yourself a relatively decent head start is key.
Well, that's like the moment you know you're in an actual dangerous situation,
Mhm.
I mean anything goes. But like
Yeah.
from you. But I think at the same time, the one thing that is a constant, and again, easier said than done, is the calmer you're able to be, the
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
more likely you are to get away and whether it's defuse the situation, get away, inflict harm, whatever it is, all of those things are going to be easier if you're calm. Because if you're
Yeah.
panicked,
Hmm.
and it's natural, right? Like
Yeah.
it's easy for anybody to say don't panic or be calm. I think if I was in that situation, I'd freak out also. And
Yeah.
it's like when our daughter's in karate, she's learned very clearly how to punch, but when she's sparring, she just goes like it's just
I know.
instinctually, it's like how can I flail my arms to connect with somebody? You might be
Yeah.
in that same situation, but even just knowing physically what you could do to buy you some time, the places you can try to impact somebody who's bigger than you to incapacitate them for a second or two or make their eyes
Hmm.
water or whatever is really important.
Yeah.
And I think, irrespective of what we say now, if you haven't looked into these things and you've been concerned about what you should do, you should at a minimum even just go on YouTube or go on the internet and look up some of this stuff to get an understanding of what to do, what not to do, what could inflict what sort of harm, you
Hmm.
know, because it's important. And I mean, I learned things that I didn't know about what to do, what not to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, we can get into those if you want, because I think
you,
we're through the amber.
about what about like the moves, like our
Yeah.
okay, let's talk moves.
Okay. So, okay, we talked about the palm. Go for the nose if you're doing the palm, because that's probably the best way, easiest way to get contact, can get you like the most impact, make their eyes water kind of thing. I think that's a good one. The other one I wanted to say was the tiger claw to the neck, like that. Like just
I
like
I,
I mean, even
I don't
doing that.
I don't want to come at you at all. Like you went with the ones that like hurt the most. Like
Well,
No,
Yeah.
it's good. But I guess for and maybe I'm probably really I am ignorant in thinking like I almost feel like you're gonna have time to have a dial in your head where you can when you can determine the degree of threat that's in front of you, right? Like
Maybe it's just like a female
it
male
might be,
thing
and well, that's the thing. Like
because like we immediately think we're in danger. Like, you
well,
know?
and if you get to the point and you're feeling like this person needs to be dropped, then yeah, the two things you just said, like have at it.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm
Two
not saying
hands,
like my
nose in.
immediate I'm not saying my immediate reaction if somebody comes into my open
But that's
house
the
is to like
problem is,
tiger claw them in the neck. But
but that's the
like
problem is
if
that
I'm in a dangerous position, I'm going to do what I can to get out. And I feel like those things are going to be the most effective because they don't require as much strength. Like I can do those to somebody that's bigger than me.
right.
And I can probably inflict more harm than trying to punch them. Cause I
Oh,
just,
and yes,
yeah.
and it is an immediate decision. That's the thing. It's not something that you can wait and be like, okay, should I go at the nose? Should I wait and see if he does something more aggressive? Like if you
Yeah.
feel in that if you're feeling in danger enough that it
Yeah.
merits then you do that. I think at a higher level, without getting into specific, although we'll get into more more specific moves, I think the theme is you want to have as many of your own limbs available,
Mhm.
is kind of how I'd put it, so that you've got options to be able to defend yourself, right? Like you don't want to be in a position where someone's holding both of your arms and has you pinned down. Although we did go through scenarios where you might be in that situation as well. I
Mhm.
mean, whatever you do, allow yourself to have an arm or a leg or more of that available for you to use. Because as long as you have that, if someone's in close quarters, there's something you can do to do what you need to do to get away.
Mhm.
Right. So whether it's throat or nose, surprisingly, from a punching perspective, his
Yeah.
big go to was, and everyone guessed wrong, it's the stomach
Mhm. Yeah.
because rightfully so, he had multiple things. Number one, it's not going to kill anybody, right? Because you never know. Like if you hit somebody in the wrong spot hard enough, I don't care how small you might be, certain places can inflict permanent damage. And although maybe you don't care because of the situation,
Mm.
from a liability perspective, even, if you're trying to save yourself and you're going to press charges or whatever and just get out of there, the stomach is literally, when they say you wind somebody, it's because if you crack them in the stomach, it will cause them to keel over and lose their breath. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the focus was very clearly on going to town on the stomach. Like if you can get somebody down, like
Mhm.
not even punching, he was all about the hammer fist,
Yeah, the hammer fist.
just over and over again, just hammering on somebody's stomach and then getting the hell out of there.
Mhm.
Or doing it like it's like UFC. Like that's what they do in the UFC, is a lot of just like wailing on somebody from above. But because the stomach's a lot of just meat, you're not going to hurt your hand, which is a big
Mhm.
deal, right? A lot of places you can hit somebody. He was talking about how even with an open palm, your thumb is very vulnerable. If you're doing things and your thumb is open, like it can break
Yeah.
back, it can get in a lot of trouble. But you need to know the same things about somebody else and where
Right.
they're vulnerable as well.
Yeah. Yeah, stomach. So yeah, so stomach is definitely key. And then there was some questions which were really good about people like if they're coming from behind you and like putting their arms around your neck or doing whatever. And there's a few different moves, but the one that I think he really emphasized was making sure you can like stomp on their foot really hard. Like that's another one that can really cause them some pain and can get you out of a situation where maybe they've got their hands around you or whatever. So just really going down hard on their foot, break the shit out of that foot.
That sounded so good. Let's break the shit out of that foot. But yeah, you do that. I mean, yeah, he had, and To all of you out there whose first instinct is to kick someone in the berries,
Mm-hmm.
it was actually a very not even a last resort. It was like a no-go for
Which
him.
I thought was I mean,
I didn't like his reasoning for it, to be honest. I mean,
because
and
it
I
was
get it.
too, it would almost inflict too much like
Well,
damage. Was that what it? Like, I'm trying to remember what he had
no,
said.
well, maybe, but he was saying because of the nature
Oh,
of
yeah, yeah,
these
yeah.
people wanting to be in control, you
Yeah,
there's certain things you can do that will demean an
yeah,
attacker to the point of making them more aggressive. And so
right.
that was an example. If you kick someone there or you punch somebody there and it doesn't really take them out, which is possible, that's the kind of thing that will like
Mhm. Create more
potentially amplify
anger.
the situation. The same thing with he was talking about punching in the bladder, and that can actually make someone pee themselves. If you do that, you know, I mean, good for you if you do that. They deserve it. But if it gets to a situation where they get embarrassed and demeaned and feel like less of a person, it could actually make the situation worse as well. So those were not the preferred spots to go for.
Yeah,
But if the situation, like, if again, if you're in a situation where you don't have a choice and you've got like a knee free and that's there, I say
yeah.
have at it.
Take it. Yeah, yeah. No,
If it
definitely.
allows you to get free and they let go of you, um, I mean, it's and then the other thing was the element of, I guess you could call it surprise. Another thing I didn't love, and I can't put myself in the position of a woman, and he can't either. And it was kind of weird that he was pretending to be a woman, and that when it was like if an attacker's on top of you and you're completely helpless,
Mm,
he
mm-hmm.
almost said you kind of play along.
I
Like
could see that. I've played that out in my head before.
that you're gonna say, oh, I've done that before.
No, 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 no. I've like because I've thought of myself in certain situations, and if that would have happened, if that would happen, God forbid. But
Yeah,
if you're honestly like, like there's a knife on you, and like,
yeah,
like you're gonna do whatever you can, and if you can play along for a bit just to like give yourself some safety or let them ease up a little bit, then for sure, I would definitely consider that like play, try to outsmart them a little bit.
yeah.
Bastards.
Well,
Um,
I
then
think
the other
yeah.
thing is, sorry, go ahead.
Well, just to build on that, I mean, in reality, if you're in a situation where you are very like in where something bad is more likely to happen than not, and you feel like taking the attack route might put you in more danger, sometimes just doing what you're told. And I mean, I don't want to say from like, it depends on what you're being told, but like he was even saying like when he's been mugged or things like that, yeah, he's a, triple grand dragon, whatever self-defense person, but still he'll do what they
He'll
tell him
hand
to do.
over his wallet,
He'll hand over his
yeah.
wallet, he'll run before
Hmm.
he'll try to do anything because it is still a last resort or
Hmm.
a not the route you'd want to go option,
Yeah.
but you can't rule it out either.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I liked was if somebody tries to pick you up, like the best way to try to get out is to just dead weight, like just
Mhm.
and he was right. Like you think about like trying to pick up if you've got kids or if you've ever tried to pick up a kid that's having a tantrum and they literally like give you dead weight. They're not even flailing. It's just like dead weight. Like try to pick somebody up like that is next to impossible. So like again, your instinct is to like kick and scream and punch and try to get out, but it's easier if somebody's holding you that you're doing that than just trying to go completely limp.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I wonder how many people listening to this when you first said that thought when you said somebody's trying to pick you up. It's like someone saying, "Hey, you
Mm,
want to go grab a drink?" And you just at the
dead
bar,
weight.
you just go
Just
dead
like
weight at the
pass out.
bar.
Yeah.
You just fall over.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's physically trying to lift you. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
The dead weight thing does work. It's true.
Mhm. Um, anything else from you? I have a couple more little points, little tips and tricks.
Well, I mean, I think the whole thing was very, I mean, for me, it was still about the awareness first. It was still
Yeah.
about, I know you want to get it, but like it was all about knowing your situation, being aware, and doing the things, being disciplined enough with yourself that I mean, it sounded mean, but he wasn't wrong that when things happen or if things happen, a lot of it is preventable. And a lot of it, it's not your fault. That's the wrong way to put it, right? But you want to, every step of the way, continue to have enough checks and balances and things that will diffuse or avoid situations before they start, right? So things like reaching out and shaking the hand, things like making sure you're always facing somebody, keeping the safe distance, all these things together not only put you in a safer position, but I believe they send a message that, that you're not the mark somebody thought you were, right?
Mhm.
And none of it is in a way that is, like we said, demeaning or implying you think anything. It's just I'm a professional who does things a certain way. And that's a way that doesn't want to be attacked or have someone come too close to me when I'm showing them a house or when I'm walking through their house or anything like that. So, but anyway, what are the things you've got, the tidbits that we have not covered yet? More moves.
Um, okay, so if you happen to have somebody from behind, like you're the one that's behind, to just keep walking backwards with them, um, like will cause them, I guess, to not have their balance and kind of get you maybe out of a like gives you an easier escape. I think that was why. But like he was
If
showing
you're
us
behind them,
if you're behind them and then you're walking backwards, sorry, I went away from the mic, but if you're walking backwards with them, like, and you've got them in like a chokehold or something.
well, this is like you're already in control, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
was gonna say, when would you ever be behind them and holding
No,
them
no, no,
and
no.
they're
If
attacking
like for
you?
some reason, like you're managed to get from behind them and you can, I mean, that's just a little minor thing, but I thought that was good to know. Cause like he showed how that happens. Like he in when we were doing it. And so you could see how that really like has somebody lose their balance. They're not as strong. I don't know, just probably gives you more opportunity to get your thoughts together and figure out how to get out. And then with it, and then if somebody is behind you and they've got their arm around you to get your chin out from, or what was it? Like
Yeah,
if
you
they're
want to
like,
make sure that they're not under your chin with their arms. So if you're picturing this, for those of you who are listening, if you know what a half Nelson is, or if you're wrestling
mhm,
like a sleeper hold, those sorts of things, when the arm is wrapped around under your chin and
yeah,
it's kind of like a headlock,
yeah,
the first thing you need to do is to be able to breathe. And that's going to
yeah,
cut off your breathing. So you need
right.
to basically use whatever you have, your arms, whatever, to pull the arm away so that you can tuck your chin in. And if you get your chin
Mhm.
wedged in there, then you're okay. Then you're in a position where you can call Katie and she'll show you how to go to town on the person.
Yeah. And the only other thing I wanted to say is the importance of noise when you're in the like you want to scream and if you can, obviously once you get out of somewhere, um, try whatever you can do. Like make sure you're making a lot of noise if you can, because
Mhm.
obviously the last thing somebody wants is to be caught. They don't want to be in that situation. So if you
Yeah.
can find opportunities to make lots of noise, even he was saying like what he'll do when he's in the ring is he'll like let out a yell as he's punching somebody. And like the first time somebody does that, like it kind of catches anybody off guard when they hear like a noise like that. So if you can try doing that as well, it might catch
I
somebody
was
off guard.
about to do it, but I pulled back. I was just going to yell really loud,
Yeah, no, I feel
but
like
I
that would
won't.
scare
Everyone can
people
make
are
sure it's
driving when they're listening to us. You
I
don't want
know
to
I
get
don't
them
want
into
anybody
car
getting in an accident.
accidents.
But tying into that though, if there's one thing that a bad person doesn't want in these situations, it's witnesses.
Yeah.
It's other people to know, to see, to be around. And so if you keep that in mind in any situation, obviously being in places with more people is always beneficial. One example was if you think you're being followed, forget real estate. If you think you're being followed outside in the dark or whatever, people's
Yeah.
instinct is to run. And
Hmm.
really, the best thing to do is just find a place where there's people, go to a bar, go to something, walk in somewhere, and just hang out. see what happens. See if the person's actually following you. And if push comes to shove, tell somebody who's in there casually, again, calmly, just go about like nothing's wrong. And in situations as well, this seems tougher to do in practice, but he was talking about, you've got your phone out all the time, put the camera on, videotape what's happening, before anything goes wrong. Like not as
Right.
someone's attacking. You don't say, "What, can you hold that
Wait a
attack for a
second.
second? I need to get a
Yeah.
shot of you grabbing me." But anything that creates a situation, now that stuff to me is less realistic.
Necessary. Yeah.
I mean, if I am videotaping someone, even if something starts and I say, "Well, I had video of you, so you better be careful," like,
Yeah.
will the person not just take your phone or whatever? Like, it
Yeah.
seems not realistic. But anyway, it is, though. It's about making sure people understand that it's not just you and them, right? Even
Mhm.
letting them know somebody knows where you are,
Yeah.
right? So, but yeah, this is all just about having your own, again, preparedness and awareness and an understanding of what to do next if something does happen.
So hopefully that was helpful for everybody. Hopefully it didn't scare the crap out of everybody, but I'm sure you just gotta, as Daniel said, it's awareness and just being smart about things. You can never be too safe. Trust your gut. In your gut, that's another thing he said, and it's very true. Your gut is almost always right. So if it doesn't feel right, then start being more aware of the situation and what you can do to make yourself safer.
Make the acronym AMBERG or GAMBER. We'll throw gut in there. But so again, the acronym was awareness, move, block, or what you thought was open palm, open hand, exit,
Exit.
and run. And those are in an actual order of what it might work like, but ultimately they're all equally important. And you don't know which part of that you might be at, but they're all relevant and useful. And then your gut, the G, put in that as well.
That's right.
All right. Well,
Well,
everybody be
thanks
safe
for
out there.
listening.
This wasn't meant to be a sad episode of sadness, but it is definitely an important thing. If you do want or are interested in places or things that could teach you more, I encourage you find the local self-defense classes. They do them everywhere. This is
Yeah.
a thing, and you should invest in doing that or talk to your brokerage about maybe putting something like that in place where you as a team can get trained together. It was a fun thing to do, right?
Mhm.
To beat each other up and learn a few things along the way.
And he did make a good point. It's like more practice, the better. So, like, obviously, none of us do this on a regular basis, or most of us don't do this on a
No,
regular basis. So, when you are in the office, grab a partner and just practice a couple of
kick their
blocks
ass.
and tiger claws to the neck, and you're good to go.
Once we stop recording, let's just do that. You can just face bomb me and break my nose. That'll be fun.
Sounds like fun. All
All
right.
right.
Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye bye.
Level up, level up, level up.